I just finished doing the February Empower series. It was so much fun. There was so much energy in the room. We had a lot of information going. We had a lot of great questions, and everyone feels like it was so valuable. So I'm going to share a quick summary of what we talked about. We talked about, number one, that you have to be focused on academics. You have to be focused on that GPA, whether you're a college student already or you're a high school student getting ready to go to college. If you want your slice of the pie when it comes to scholarships, you got to be focused on academics. Number two, we talked about testing, making sure that you have a test target score and that you're focused on making sure you can reach that while you're practicing so that you don't have any problems the day of the test and you're ready for the money. Number three, we talked about service with leadership, making sure that you're showing the potential investor who's going to give you a grant or a scholarship or a fellowship that you're invested in your community just like they are, and that you will lead and bring new solutions and new ideas back to your community after you get your degree. And number four, so we had 5 steps, we're on number 4. Number 4 is to make sure you have that it factor. What's your wow standout factor that's gonna differentiate you and set you apart from other people that are also competing against you for money? And number 5 is you gotta understand the scholarship application process. You gotta understand the cycle. So for high school students, that cycle starts back in August, and the big money, I can go to any college, I want 2 scholarships, their deadlines are in the fall, they're not in the spring. And then you have your community scholarship. That cycle starts again in January to April, but there's scholarships due throughout the year. So you gotta gear up and be ready senior year. Don't miss those deadlines. Thank you for joining in on the Power Series. We hope to see you soon. Y'all ready to get this going? We got to get these scholar dollars is what I say. We have to get these scholar dollars. So I'm Tandy Caraway. I am the founder of an organization called College Mode Academy. College Mode Academy helps students prepare for college through a myriad of ways. So we work with them on their academics because that's really important, making sure that they keep their GPA up, but they also actually know the content they're supposed to know. We work with them on test prep, and we work with them on career development and personal development. All those things contribute to them being successful in college, and also becoming the candidate that people want to see, people want to pour money into and make a good investment, right? So they have to look like a good investment on paper because that's where the application process starts for money. And a lot of times we don't always think of that. We think about just keep our grades up, but we don't think about the whole package. People are looking for a whole package. Kind of like if you're looking for a rock star, celebrity, if you're trying to get someone into music and you're trying to put them on stage, like what is that star power they have? What's that it factor? You need the same thing when you're applying for scholarships. So I'm going to back up and tell you a little bit about my story and where I come from. I grew up right here in Oak Cliff. Most of my time was spent in like the Kimball feeder pattern, but I was bussed into Spence Academy. That's the Talented and Gifted program. And that changed the trajectory. Because I'm in the business of helping kids go to college, I want to remember that moment so bad when I decided to go to college, but I can't remember it. But I can tell you it happened once I was at Spence. A counselor put us, 3 or 4 of us in her car, because there weren't enough kids that could probably go over there. So she put us in her car one day and took us to Spence open house during the school day on a field trip. And that just opened a whole new world to me. These kids were talking about going to Europe. These kids were talking about all these things I had never heard about or seen in the hood, right? So I said, okay, I have to get there. So we filled out the application. They only let 76 kids in. Luckily, I was one of those 76 kids. So exposure is so important. So when I talk about the whole package, I actually work with other organizations and make referrals out for my kids to get exposed because I can't be everything to them in this process. But we want to make sure they become who they want to be, that they reach their best potential. It's not about what the parents want, contrary to what some parents may think. It's really about what they want. It's only at the point that the student is pursuing something that's important to them that they're really going to go after it, okay? So we work really hard at finding those things and going after it and developing them in those areas. So I went to Spence, and then I went on to Skyline High School. And I was excited. I thought I would open daycare. So I always thought it would be in education. 2 years into Skyline, I was ranked number 2, but the counselor told me I had to go to summer school. And I said, this lady has lost her mind. I've been working too hard all school year to have to go to summer school. And she wouldn't admit that it was really her fault in terms of my scheduling, that I was going to have to go to summer school, but she was insistent that I was going to have to go if I wanted to graduate on time and stay in my cluster, which you don't have a choice to do that at Skyline. If you're over there because you're in a cluster, so you got to stay in the cluster. And I started thinking everything that I've been working for is going up in smoke because I've got to go to summer school. I'm supposed to be headed to college. How is this going to work together? And if she can't get my schedule right, whatever this college stuff is that I still don't understand how it works, she's not getting that right. And so I started looking for places to transfer and landed at Lincoln High School. I was in the National Council of Negro Women, the Young Women's part, and there were some mentors there that were at Lincoln, and they told me about the programming over there, so I transferred to Lincoln. So that's how I ended up. So it's a story, and I call it the breadcrumb trail. I kept following to get to college and do what I needed to do. So the first lesson I would say to parents in the room is don't trust the other adults in the village explicitly, just thinking that they have everything in mind. You're the only one holding all the pieces to the puzzle, and you're the only one that can see the whole picture, okay? It's okay to question the village and say, if they're the coach, if they're the counselor, if they're the teacher, so this is what we're looking at as a family. How does what you're doing right now benefit that? Because from my perspective, it may hurt it, okay? That's the one thing that I know my outcome with these scholarships would have been different had I stayed at Skyline. It would have looked very different, okay? Fast forward to Lincoln, I ended up going to Africa, and we'll talk about why that's significant. And my roommate there, that impression she made as an upperclassman for me changed a lot of things too. But the resources there at Lincoln, because we had Dr. Napoleon B. Lewis, if anybody remembers him, he went to bat. Whatever he saw in North Dallas, he was going to make sure we had it in South Dallas. He did not care how you felt about it. And he rallied the community to make sure we had what we needed at Lincoln. And we also had Winnie Mandela's coming through the door. We had BT filming at our school. So it was just a whole different environment for me to be in. I encourage you to make sure your youth are getting exposed. There's programs in the community doing this stuff still, but a lot of times it's like they're light under a bushel. Somebody's hiding, you don't know what nook and cranny. This is the perfect place to connect and network and find those things out, okay? So today's topic is 5 steps to get paid to advance your education. And at College Mode, we work really hard for our students to have a debt-free college journey. We want them to graduate debt-free. If at all possible, we want them to graduate debt-free. And so right now we have over $1 million in scholarship offers this school year alone. We average about $80,000 per student per year when they stay in for a year, if they're in at least a year-long program with us, a signature program. 100% of our kids are continuing their college journey at this point, and that's huge. A lot of students come back home after that first year. So developing the whole student changes the game in terms of long-term success and longevity and actually getting to the point of graduation, guys. So you got to think about the short term and the long term. So I said that to give you some idea of following these 5 steps can change how this all kind of plays out for you. At the point that someone's paying for you to go to college, they're making an investment in you, right? That investment is going to pay every time you get your paycheck or every time you get a new client if you're an entrepreneur like me. It's going to keep paying itself 10 times over. All right, the investment that the teachers made in me and the people that gave me scholarships, they're getting it back 10 times over in the community right now with the work that I do. And so that's really what they're looking at. What are the chances that this student is going to be successful and bring a return on investment to the community? How how is my vision for the future going to come alive because I'm supporting this student? And so the first step in the process is to be on point with your academics. So when we looked at the question, we asked you all if you were in college, had a college student. So raise your hand if you're an adult and you're in college, you're thinking about going back. Okay. Raise your hand if you're a parent and you have a teen, so 13 and up. Okay, so we have a little mix in here. Good. So I'll talk about both sides of the coin today. So when we talk about academics, you want to be focused on, for teens, I require a 3.5. Okay, that's half A's, half B's. If they have 6 classes, they need, at least in their core, their electives, they're usually going to make A's or B's. But I'm talking about even in the core classes, I look for a 3.5 because some colleges will recalculate the GPA. Yes. 4.0 skill. 4.0 skill. Very important question. I look for that on a 4.0 scale. So half A's, half B's. Core classes, math, science, social studies, English. If they cannot get half A's and half B's, then you need to rethink what placement they're in, more than likely. So sometimes we're really bent on them being in honors, pre-AP, AP, IB, all these honors rigor classes. If they can't grasp the content, it's going to be a problem for them later on. A C, raise your hand if you're in high school. I think you're in high school, right? Okay. What does it take to get a C nowadays? A C means they know less than half of what they need to know most of the time. They don't know that content. So a C doesn't exist in my world, okay?
Can you talk about that briefly? Because we talked about it at the lunch and learn.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to know about it, so please take down some notes.
Okay, so the Accounting Career Awareness Program is a program that National Association of Black Accountants has that introduces high school students to the accounting and business field. And it's not just accounting. It's business, and it's not just for accounting students. We take on not just African American students, it's anyone who applies. You go through a scholarship. Interview application process. But these students have gone on from being learning about the business field and through this program, going to college to professional and having networks that they build at this level that they take on through their professional career.
Yeah.
In my personal testimony, my son, between his sophomore and junior year, attended the ACAP program in Ohio. He spent a week on Ohio State University's campus. He was not interested at all in accounting. He didn't know why I was telling him to go to it, but when he went, the first thing that impressed him is that he was around other students at different school districts who were excelling, like classical piano. They were just doing so much, so it raised his expectation. He may have been doing well in his school, but what I kept telling him is that there's other students out there that are exceeding in a higher level than what you see. So being around other students who are about excellence and developing themselves with a good experience, he changed his idea. Now he wants to start a business. He's not in accounting right now, but his minor is entrepreneurship. But I would say that he went to the one at Ohio State, and then between his junior and senior year, he came here to Dallas. So you guys do take on students that are not in the Dallas school districts. So he came down here to Dallas, spent a week at SMU, and I would say that really got him focused really on going to college, and it really gave him something to write during his essay process about his experiences and developing relationships. So I would encourage you to take down information, share it with somebody, because I think you guys will offer 60 students, but the cost there's no cost to you.
No cost to you. And then a lot of times it's students that are first-time college students in their family, and so they don't really know what it takes to go to college. Mm-hmm. And so this 1-week program kind of gives them an introduction on how to be on time. They have a schedule that they have to stick to and everything. So it kind of gives them some knowledge about how to perform in college as well.
Yeah. So I definitely endorse ACAP. I'm convinced that I did it at some point. I just don't remember where it was back in the day. I want to say that some of you all came out to Lincoln at some point. But But that is definitely one of the things I would say when we're talking about personal development. I had a kid flying from Miami last year to stay overnight at UT Arlington just because he had never spent any time away from his parents, and he was going into senior year. And I was like, before we do this, I'm working with this kid. I'm seeing who this kid is. We got to pull him from under the wings of mom and dad. And so these exploration activities, especially when they're first time in college or they have been sheltered, be honest with yourself. A lot of us are saying we did things differently, or the world is so much different that we've coddled our kids. This generation has been coddled somewhat. They need those experiences.
Oh, and the website is dallasacap.com.
Okay.
ACAP.
dallasacap.com. Perfect. Yes, ma'am.
And are you accepting that? When do you start accepting applications?
It's now through the 31st. Yep. I posted it in my Facebook group. So March. Next month, not February. Yeah. But so here's a little nugget. If the deadline is the 31st, my kid's deadline is the 15th. The deadline is never the deadline. Okay. That's another rule. The deadline is never the deadline. Senior year, the deadline is never the deadline. Somebody brought something else to my attention that is true. It's not true in every district, but the districts have changed grading. And a lot of times it's hard for a teacher to show the students true progress because some other districts have the grading where the teacher cannot give a 0. Okay, so they have to at least give them a 50. And the kids know that. The kids that are smart and the ones that are ready to go to college mentally, those kids are figuring it out. Like how many, our son did that. That was the bane of our existence as parents in middle school and high school, was he figured out what he needed to make his B's because he wasn't shooting for A's most of the time. And so he would, if we didn't check the grade book down to the assignment, we wouldn't see what was going on. So he'd have straight A's and then 3 zeros because he figured out, okay, I can take this week off and then I'll get back on it after this and it'll be okay. I don't need that. So know your kid, pay attention. Don't just look in the portal at the grade itself. Look at the trends of the actual assignments they're turning in and see what's happening with that. If they're always getting A's and B's on classwork and then they're always getting C's on tests, there's something going on there that needs to be addressed before they get into these high testing states like we're going to talk about with the SAT and the ACT, the GRE and the GMAT and all those things. So going back to the academics. So for the teens, 3.5. 3.5 is really where you start getting a lot. You know you've solidified, at least on the academic side, some full rides, okay, to some colleges that you would know the name of, okay? So if we're talking about the UTAs, Texas A&M, UT Austin, UNT, you're starting to solidify your standing to get full scholarship offers at that point. And so that's why I set it at 3.5 as a minimum. Some students, their minimum is a 3.6, it's a 3.7. I have a student that's at a 3.72. I told her, so we're going for 3.75. We're not going for 3.5. So it's according to the student. You got to know each student and what they can do and how to support them. The other thing I would say is when we talk about support for academics, support is not just about telling them to do it or giving direction. Support sometimes means sitting at the kitchen table with them or next to their desk, you reading a book or doing whatever else you have to do. A lot of times I'll tell moms and dads while you're cooking, that's their time to be at the table, and you can keep checking back on them and see what they're doing, especially when they're doing SAT and ACT prep. You want to keep them focused. It's kind of a push and pull. They're at the point where you're going to have to coach, so you're going to have to go hard when it's time to go hard, and you're going to have to let up when it's time to let up. If you push them too hard all school year, they're going to burn out fast. And so as a teacher, what I learned is I went hot and heavy at the beginning of school because I wanted them to know my routine. I wasn't letting up on this is our routine, this is what we do. But there was a time span between second 9 weeks where I wasn't pushing them as hard. They had to stay in bounds, but I knew that spring was coming and we had testing and that I was going to drag them by their nails if I needed to. They weren't getting out of that. Those 8 weeks that I did final test prep, I went really hard on them, and I knew that time was coming. And so you can't stay on the gas. You're going to burn out. They're going to burn out. You want to set the tone and the rhythm, get them into it, hold them accountable, and then when you need to go into third and fourth quarter, you still have some gas left in the tank, right? So support-wise tutoring, sometimes we see tutoring as only for students who are failing or not meeting the standard. A lot of my students that are really successful get tutoring ongoing. There's some type of support for them in their challenging areas, just ongoing. It's already built in. That keeps their anxiety down. If they already know they're not good in science, they're not good at writing in English, and they don't know where that support is going to come from, they stress about it, whether they're saying something to you or not. So figure out where can you get support. If it's a private tutor, if there's a teacher after school, maybe it's their teacher they have now, maybe it's the teacher they had the year before. What does that look like for your individual student in their challenging areas? Wherever that area is, you've seen it since like elementary. They always have that little area. Everybody has their weakness. Where are you going to support them at in that area? How are you going to get it done? Step number 2 is testing. Oh, wait, I got to go back for the adults. So academics for us, if you're returning after not being in school for a while, you need to make sure you're college ready. And so reading and math and writing are the areas that you really need to be college ready in, okay? There's the TSI in the state of Texas. There's also the AccuPlacer. You want to be performing at college level on those tests. If you're just nervous when you take it and you're like, oh, I didn't even know it was going to be on this test, and you don't do well, that's one thing. But if you're on that test and you're like, I don't remember any of this stuff, I don't know what's going on, then you need to step back, spend some time studying, remediating those skills, getting them up to par before you move forward. A lot of times we'll be like, I just need to pass the test. No, that test is an indicator of how well you're going to do in that next reading, math, social studies, right, whatever that school has to offer. That test and the score they're requiring is a good indicator of where you are and how well you're going to do. So if you barely pass that test, you're going to struggle hard when it comes to whatever that area is, okay? The example I tell my kids all the time, I made a D+ in Calculus 1 my freshman year in college. That was horrible for me. That was my first time really failing at anything. It was just horrific because I was on full scholarship. I did not know how to deal with that emotionally. And so the teacher had told me during the professor had told me during orientation not to take that calculus class. And I said, I already have credit for pre-calculus. I'm not retaking it. I paid dearly for that mistake. So you want to make sure that you're actually ready for the course, even if that means taking calculus in high school and stepping down to college algebra. If you're going into business and the only requirement is for math or college algebra and business calculus, don't say, I just finished calculus, so I'm just going to, because they're still going to say you need those 2 units of math. Start where the college plan tells you to start and make sure you're ready for it. Sometimes we look at where we were in high school and say, I need to finish from there. Take the easy road. Nobody's checking that. Don't beat yourself up about it. Any questions about academics? That's step 1, academics, making sure your academics on point. Yes.
Yes, Tandy, what about the adults who are already enrolled in college?
Mm-hmm.
What is the grade point average? Is that still the 3.0 on a 4.0?
Oh, that's a good question. So for my college students, most of the scholarships are going to say they need to have at least a 3.0. Okay. That's where that's the red line, really. I try to keep them at a 3.25 or higher in college. The other thing you want to pay attention to when it comes to scholarships, so some scholarships will say you have to have a 3.5 to qualify for this, but then you have to maintain a 3.5. If that 3.5 was really, really hard to maintain in high school, that's not going to be a good scholarship for them to probably even apply for. I don't put them in positions where it's a renewable scholarship and we're going to need that money every year, where they are probably going to fail. It's too high pressure for them. So I'll look for a kid that's in high school that has a 3.5. I'll look for scholarships that say like 3.25 is what's required to keep going. Okay. There's some colleges that will give scholarships based on your weighted GPA. You asked me about, was that a 4.0 or 5.0? And so the kid may have a 3.5 on the weighted scale, but then if the college says to keep up a 3.5, they didn't have a 3.5 technically in high school, they're not going to be able to maintain that scholarship. So I will even ask, like, hey, can we just do the scholarship below that so that they can actually maintain? So yeah, for college students, I would say a 3.5 or higher. If you can do more, always do more. But the difference in college is that your courses are prescribed. So you kind of, don't have a choice unless you're in honors college, and then you can say, I need to go down to another level. All right. Any other questions about academics? All right, perfect. So we'll move on to testing. So testing for high school students is SAT and ACT. And our goal is to score college ready on the SAT and the ACT. Those levels for the SAT are right around 1,050. Okay. For SAT, your goal is to be college ready, ACT and SAT. And if your kid took the PSAT this year, did anybody's kid take the PSAT? Okay. When you got the report on the front, it has those lines where it either goes into red, yellow, or green. Pay attention to those because that's their college readiness level. Okay. They do it by grade level, but overall, by the time they're a senior, they need to be around a 1050. Okay. For ACT, they need to be between an 18 to 21 to show college readiness. And so that's the reason why you'll see students that have like a 4.0 on a 5.0 scale, and you go, well, why didn't they get any scholarship money? If you go look at their test scores, they may only have a 16, 17, 18. That's considered average. Scholarships are given to scholars that are performing at an excellent level, okay? So the mediocrity is not an option, really, if you're talking about scholarship money, guys. So make sure that they're excelling in those areas that they can excel in. They're not taking the easy road out, okay? Test prep. So I'll give you a list of tools. I didn't get a sheet, so there's going to be a sheet that you can hand out and give me your information in a little bit. And you can give that to me and I'll send it to you, some tools you can use for test prep. There's a couple things that work across the board, whether you're a student returning or you're a high school student. You have to know what your goal is. You have to know what your test goal is. If you don't know what that test or target score is, you're probably not going to do as well as you want to do. And so I'll give you an example. Some students are like, I want to do, you have in your mind, I want to do well on this test because I want to get admitted to school. And then you take the test and you think, I've been studying, and you get a score that's way lower than you wanted to get, but you never really set a target score. So my students and I, we sit down and set a target score. In high school, that score is always based on the colleges they want to attend. It's based on scholarships that they're looking at that they want to be able to qualify for. I would suggest the same thing for the graduate students. What schools are you applying to? What's their GRE requirement? For returning for graduate students in particular, the departmental requirements may be different than the school requirements. So you're doing law school, your requirements are different for law school than it is for the other part of the campus, right? Yeah. So make sure you're checking by department. If you're returning, if you're doing graduate, master's, or a master's graduate certificate, or a PhD or doctoral program. All right. Have a testing score, have a system and a set of tools that you know have been proven that can get you there. The last thing you want to do is spend a lot of time prepping using tools or classes or whatnot that won't actually help you get there. So how do you find those tools? Any idea what you might be using to prep for high school, for SAT, ACT? What are you guys using?
When I was in high school, they had this class you could take. I think it was called Princeton Skills, and what it was a company that would help you study for the SAT and give you tips. You would have to.
Was that at the school?
Yeah, I was from Muskegon. It was helpful for me because it did help me out.
Okay.
On the ACT and the SAT.
And a lot of schools do have an SAT prep class. University Crossroads is sponsored and hosted by the University of Texas at Arlington. And they have a series going right now. I think they usually do one at Duncanville High and one at WT White. Okay. The thing is, the student has to actually engage, right? Because there's students in there because mom told me to get up this morning and show up. Besides telling them to show up, I want all your scratch work. I'm going to check with the people and see what happened.
Recruiting when I was going in high school, then you should start recruiting after your freshman year and your sophomore year because they start looking at it. Oh, if he wants to do something, so they ask you, when you talk to the counselor, they ask you if you want to take this class.
Right. And so that's the other. So we'll jump in there. That's a good point. The counselors at your high schools, they have, I think the average now is 200 to 300 kids, guys. It's a lot. It's a lot. And then they also are having to deal. I talked to a counselor the other day. Here in Texas, most schools are blessed that they have like a college counselor plus their regular counselor. But there's still some schools where the counselor is still doing crisis intervention and the emotional stuff besides getting testing and all this other stuff. So they just don't have a lot of time with your student. And besides them looking at the student's data and grades and other stuff that they have, they don't know your child's serious about college until you make an appointment as a family and set that expectation and say, so we're planning for college. We know we need this amount of money or this amount of financial support. What resources and tools are available at the school? And pay attention to the upperclassmen as well. What did they do that was successful? Follow success. Okay. Go to senior awards night when you're not a senior. See what's happening. Go to senior awards and go to baccalaureate. See what's happening. What are those kids getting? Go to graduation and see what they're being honored for. Because those students have already gotten where you're trying to go at your school, and they've used those resources that you're probably overlooking. Okay, so that was one of my secrets. Anybody else? How you're preparing for the SAT or the ACT? Yes, ma'am.
They, my kids' school actually offers Kaplan Academy. And it's, I guess they go online and study. And now, like for one of the classes, it's a requirement for them to do PSAT prep work.
Okay. Are they an AVID? No. Okay. So it's good. It's not an AVID class, and they're requiring that. Very good. What school are they at? Saxe High. Very good. So there's some schools out here offering it. Yes.
Also, because I taught for about 14 years, English teacher.
Yes.
And we, at the school that I taught at, they also had the SAT and ACT prep classes at school.
Right.
We emphasize that you have to get a manual. We provided them actual manuals that they have to be working on outside of that. You can't just come and just work on it that day with us.
Right.
It has to be a continuous thing that you're working on at home, and you're in that book and you're practicing those problems and working them out.
All right. Exactly. So they have to engage. The moral of the story is you have to engage in the test prep process. And this is another one where I would be very specific about that time. So if that course is a semester course, they're going to go really hot and heavy that semester in test prep. And then you're going to come off the gas, see where their test scores are. If they're where they need to be, go ahead and test them right there. As soon as they're ready, test them. It doesn't, they can take the SAT or the ACT test at any point in high school to get the score they need, and it will be received by the college just fine. So at the point that they hit where they need to be, so I would say on the SAT, 1200 is where you start hitting the top 75 percentile nationwide. And so you want to be shooting for that as much as you can early on. For the ACT, it's around a 28, 29. So if you're looking for scholarship money and you're serious about it, you want to be in the 75 percentile or higher of everything. So that's another reason why we're looking at that GPA. All right, for GRE and GMAT, you want to maybe even Facebook is great for forums. So you want to get in the flow with some other students and see what they use that work for them. YouTube is also great. People make YouTube videos about how I ace the GRE and see what they're saying that they use. A lot of times they're doing it because they have an affiliate link on Amazon, but it's a book and it's a tool and it works. Okay. And then they do hold, Kaplan, some of the other companies, Princeton Review, do have those classes. But I'm willing to bet if you go out on social media, there's somebody that's doing it too. The LSAT, there's a study group somewhere for that test you're trying to prepare for, and they're working together as a team to get it done. All right. So step number 3 is service with leadership. Service with leadership. People who give out scholarship money, if you think about it, they're serving others. Either they fundraise the money, even if they're just reading the applications to decide who gives it, they're giving their time free and willing to do that. So they're always looking for a like-minded person that's going to give back to the community. So if you have no service on your resume and on your profile, this is going to be a problem for them because you're not showing yourself to be grateful for the things you do have already, and you're not showing yourself to be an asset to the community. All right, guys? So service, and then the leadership part is we're always looking for people to bring us to the next level as a society and as a community. And so they want to see leadership. Our introverted kids are the hardest students. Sometimes we think they can't do leadership because they're not talkers, and that's not true. So raise your hand if you have an introvert. I see you nodding your head. You got an introvert at home? Yeah. Okay. So here's some tips for that. I have them do writing. Usually the introverts are creative. They have some type of creative outlet. And letting them lead using that outlet is going to be the key to them doing what you need them to do when it comes to leadership. So sometimes they're willing to show younger kids how to do the same things they do. Sometimes, like I have kids who write articles and submit them to blogs and newspapers. So sometimes it's thought leadership. Sometimes they're leading just a committee about something they're really passionate about. So maybe they're not willing to lead a whole organization. But I had a kid that was in the Art Honor Society at DeSoto a couple years ago, and he did the whole Christmas toy drive. Like, he organized that. That was his passion. He was comfortable gathering his people within the organization to make that happen. So look for it looks like smaller ways for them to lead. It's about how you position it on the actual application and in their essay that's going to make the difference. If they're reflective and can articulate the difference it made for them and how they want to continue that at the next level, they'll be fine. All right. So make sure you have service, and then there's leadership, not just the title. You can have a title, but have no leadership. Okay. I have students that sometimes they take the leadership position, they want the titles. And I go, so what are you leading your people to? What did you accomplish as president? Like, what happened? Are things different? Like, the student council president over at Grand Prairie High is one of my students. They did their first homecoming dance because she was president and she went after it. So they need to have those kinds of stories on their profile in their resume. And it's not, sometimes we think it's hard. It's not as hard as you think. They just need to take what they're doing and take it to the next level. They need you to brainstorm and push them to do that. Okay. Another example, I have a student, she's the first Black president of the public safety group at her high school. And she led them to state competition and they won. So that's a story that she's always going to have. A student that has their application laying next to hers on a scholarship committee's table, she's always going to have that difference. That's not something else somebody else can say they did, right? So don't be afraid to think outside of the box when it comes to this. I have a student that's going to do he's going to walk some other kids through discussions and screenings about movies like The Hate U Give. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be doing some community stuff around that.
What about, because I have nieces and I have one that's in drill.
Uh-huh.
So what about athletics? And is that something?
How are they leading?
Well, that's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that, we should just start directing her in, start an initiative to lead into
Yeah, she needs to take a leadership role. Don't sit back. That may mean leading something with service on her team. Mm-hmm. That may mean
because they do community activities.
Is she taking a lead in it? Is she just showing up because they told me to do it? Yeah. Got to take a lead. You got to show where you're taking initiative in other places so they believe you can take initiative when you're by yourself on a college campus. That's really what that's about. The fourth thing is your ability to show that you are going to succeed at that next level. So what is it you have in your pantry, so to speak, or in your closet that is really going to show that you can succeed at that next level? What adversity have you had to overcome and you still had a wildly successful outcome? What is the thing that your parents and your family are proud of? What are those things? Because sometimes students do things. I had students that participated in a TEDx and hosted it. They didn't know that was important. They weren't going to put it on their resume. So they need your help in determining sometimes the importance of what they're doing and unpacking that and reflecting about it. Okay. So make sure they're also doing that part. Somebody give me an example of what they think would be their standout factor, their wow thing, their it factor. And we'll play with that for a moment. Got a little more time. Anybody?
So just to expound on having a
Yes.
3.5 GPA, while at El Centro, my mentor, a good friend of Chris, pushed me to join Phi Theta Kappa.
Yes. That's another one I push.
Perception about Phi Theta Kappa is a fraternity or sorority, but it's not. It's actually a national honor society.
Yeah.
And by joining Phi Theta Kappa, I was able to get that full tuition scholarship.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Sharing my little cousins this morning, just because you still get that full tuition scholarship, there's still other costs, such as housing and meal planning, that some may not be aware of.
Right.
About. But because I did have a 3.5 GPA, I was also recognized as all Texas academic team, and had an experience there in Austin, in which my mentor came to. As well. Congratulations. So the GPA is definitely important.
And the fact that Phi Theta Kappa, so he layered it, right? You layered it for me. You said he had the GPA, but part of his wow factor was what? He joined Phi Theta Kappa and he became part of it. So now that became part of his profile. Phi Theta Kappa, if you take the community college route, look at any state college. They're going to have a Phi Theta, any state of Texas college, and then nationwide they're going to have one, but definitely state of Texas, they all have a scholarship based off of Phi Theta Kappa. Sometimes it's, partial tuition, sometimes it's full tuition, but that's part of you doing your homework to find out what school is going to give me the best offer based on what I have in my profile. But also reverse engineering and saying, I need a full tuition. Who's giving a full tuition and what are the requirements? Oh, they want Phi Theta Kappa. Let me go find out where that's at on my campus. So I think I harassed one of my students that started nursing school. She did her community college run, non-traditional. A young lady that I had mentored and worked with in the church for a while. So she finished her associates last spring and she just started in January with her nursing program to get her licensure. And it was the same thing. I think I harassed her. She was like, I did it. I sent the money and I did it. I was like, don't miss it. There's some money there. So yeah, that's a really important one to think about for community college. Honor Society, to be honest with you, is not looked at as, for high school, is not as prestigious as it once was. It's definitely not. You want it on there if your school has it because it looks weird if they don't have it. But that's why they need that other standout factor. But thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, what is that wow factor? For me, another wow factor is when I went to Africa, the National Association of Black Journalists. So if you have the National Association of Black Journalists also mentors young men and women that want to go into journalism. They sponsored part of my trip to Africa. And in exchange, I kept a diary in a journal and gave those reflections back to them to write about and to share with the community. So that was something I was able to talk about in depth, not just the journey, but because I had to journal it and chronicle it, I shared that out as part of my wow factor in my essays and applications.
Also, as a former teacher, but also as a student, we had the opportunity to nominate students, and I myself was nominated as a student by Who's Who Among.
Yes.
And that nomination I received allowed me to have an all-expense paid trip to go to Ohio State. It was me and 5 other was a professor of African American Studies at my college,
Oh,
and I
okay.
was the only female. And it was great because they spoiled me. But when you talk about academics and students,
Yes,
it's good for students to have a good rapport with their teachers, to show your teachers that you are interested in your education.
absolutely.
Because teachers have access to nominate students for these different types of programs and scholarships
Absolutely.
as well.
And in college, it becomes 10 times more important to build that rapport with them, because they have those things coming across and they're like, and typically in a college class, they're not going to know any of their kids really well enough, except for the ones who come to office hours. So those are the people who automatically get put on the paper, right? Like it's just automatic. They're the ones that's going to be nominated. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I understand the out of the box thing.
Yes.
The leadership,
Mm-hmm.
just being exposed. So my daughter has been very exposed. She's done a mission trip to Ghana.
Awesome.
A lot of things that most average kids don't do. However, her GPA is not what you're talking about.
Okay.
Her test scores are not what you're talking about, but she's very artistic. She can sing. She can draw. She's very creative. I'm sorry. But she has a lot to offer.
Right.
A lot to offer, but that GPA and its reasons behind all of that, she's experienced a tragedy and been very strong and overcame that. So I understand those things are important when you write your scholarship, but they're still looking at that GPA and they're still looking at that test score, in spite of how hard she worked.
So what we have to do for students like that, so there's ways to work with those students. So remember I told you got to have an it factor. So you're telling me she has one. It's just not academic. So so I gave you the perfect like strawberry cake recipe or German chocolate cake recipe, right? That's what I'm giving you. When students, at the end of the day, if you have something special, if you have that it factor, you have to work that thing until the wheels fall off. Okay, you got to find the colleges and the scholarships who are looking for kids that look like her. That's going to be the key to that. You got to find the people who are looking for her. There are people looking for her, but if you keep going over here, it's like you like this guy, but this guy doesn't like you. Stay away from those colleges that aren't showing you love. They're not your friend. There's somebody looking for her. You got to play matchmaker. Who's looking for her? Okay. There's always that situation. So that's a good point to make. So I'm giving you all the perfect recipe and the perfect steps. But if you have a student that doesn't fit that, then it's kind of like losing one of your senses. You got to go higher in another category to compensate for that. And then the fifth thing before we run out of time today is that you have to understand the scholarship process and the application cycle. If you don't, you will miss deadlines and that money will not come back around when you're a senior in high school. A lot of parents are like, well, I know they were giving full tuition scholarships to students like mine, but we missed the deadline. Can I apply for it the second year they're in college? No. I had a parent call me this week. Student had a 1,400 out of 1,600 on the SAT. No scholarship money. Missed the college's deadline. Horrible. Horrible. So this is how the cycle runs. Starting in about August of the senior year, the big scholarships that are like a scholarship to any college, those open up around that time, and they're due usually around September or October. They're due early in the school year, those bigger ones. They're like 40,000, 160,000, all these really big scholarships, they're due early. The DOD SMART, I have a student that is in the second round. He's in the final phases of that. He's interviewing to get a $160,000 scholarship. We did that in the fall. So if you're looking at the bigger scholarships and they do have the GPA and they have those things, or they're in this situation where they need to audition because they're a musician, a dancer, an actor, actress, those things start in the fall, okay? They do some spring auditions, but they started in the fall, so they're going to be really selective by the time you get to the spring. So you want to start then, and then right now, starting January 15th through April 15th or the end is what I call senior scholarship season. There's scholarships rolling out like somebody's just printing them on paper. So your student in this time of the year, 5 to 10 scholarships a week minimum. Find them. You can make posters. You can make videos. Taco Bell has a $25,000, I think, that's based on you making a 3-minute video. So if they're not strong academically, you got to compensate for that by building up their speaking, their artistic skills. You got to compensate for it somewhere. Their athleticism, you got to compensate for it. But the money's there. You got to go look for it and find the places that match up. So I'm going to recap. Step 1 was academics. Step 2 was take care of the testing requirements for whatever level school you're going to. Step 3 was service with leadership, showing that you are willing to serve others and make a difference while you're doing it. Okay. Number 4 was your it factor. You need that wow. What is it that's going to make me look different when I'm sitting, if I'm lined up with other scholarship applicants, where am I going to really have that wow factor? And number 5 was understanding the scholarship application process and how it runs. For graduate students, you need to start looking for your money about a year before you expect to start school. Okay? The Knight Foundation, I think, is it McKnight or Knight Foundation? They do full scholarships for fellowships for college. They even give you a stipend. But the deadline is January of the year before you want to go. So the cycle is longer for graduate school students. You need to start 12 to 18 months before you plan on actually enrolling in college for your graduate degree. Okay. The SMART scholarship that I mentioned is for undergraduate and graduate. So if you're going to science, technology, engineering, or math, they will pay your college expenses and give you a stipend of $25,000 to $38,000 a year and health insurance and a job in the summer. SMART. It's sponsored by the DOD, the Department of Defense. DOD, Department of Defense. So if you just type SMART scholarship, it comes up because they do sponsored ads. They're trying to get people to apply for the money because they want it competitive. And then military. If your child has any interest in the military at all, if they're into physical fitness, anything like that. So you have the Army, ROTC, you have, the Navy. So all the branch, they have their own ROTC, Air Force. And those, you have to check within each branch. But the interesting thing I recently learned, and I want to make sure I share that today, is that you don't always have to go to full service to get those scholars. You don't have to commit to full service. You can commit to the reserves. Okay. And the ones that are ROTC, so if they do JROTC in high school, they actually get some credit. And then when they do ROTC in college, they don't get drafted or anything like that. They stay in college their 4 years and then do their service commitment after. Whether it be, reserves for 5 years or full service for 3 years or however it works for that branch. That's another, when students are struggling a little bit academically, but they're into fitness, they're athletic, but they don't want to play at the next level. That's another place that I see them go to, that they're successful, and they get a lot of benefits from it too. Okay. Any questions about the 5 steps? Questions about the 5 steps? Yes. 2 was testing, making sure you're meeting the testing requirements. Any other questions? All right. So what I would encourage you to do is follow up, because that's one of the things Clifton and I talked about from the very beginning, is connecting you to resources. I have a Facebook group. It's on the back of the 9 Ways to Go to College for Free, the paper that they handed you. You can connect in there. I put scholarships and post scholarships in there. I post tips like what I'm talking about today. If you pick my brain any day of the week, you're probably going to get a different nugget of the week. So that's the best way to keep getting information and to stay engaged with me personally. And then I post a lot, like ACAP. I knew the deadline for that because I posted it in the group, and I'm reminding the parents about those things. And so I try to make sure we follow the testing deadlines. I try to let the parents know, hey, late registration is about to happen if you don't register by now. I try to be that other voice that maybe the counselor doesn't have the time and resources to be. I try to be the after hours voice of the counselor for the parents. And then if you're going back to school, a lot of times it just helps you to stay focused and pay attention. Okay, this is what they're asking for. We give examples of what other students have done to be successful. There's just a lot of resources there. And keep following me, keep following the Empower series. Thank you so much for having me today.
My name is Gabrielle Beasley, and I really enjoyed the Empowerment series today. I have already got my degree, my bachelor's degree, but at some point I think I do want to go back and get my graduate's degree. So this was very beneficial, but even more so, even if I don't decide to do that, I have nieces and cousins who are right there who need to start working on the scholarship, and I have so much information, valuable tools to take back. So this was a phenomenal session for more reasons, not just for myself, but for others, and I just keep it going. And yes, I definitely would recommend somebody to the empowerment sessions because their mission statement is about everybody thriving. Well, we have a good economy if everybody's thriving. It just keeps going. It's just a cycle that just keeps going and going and going. So I'm always down for anything or anyone that's trying to build not just a particular community, but communities as a whole.
My name is Quincy Kirkland. I came today because of my mom. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I did learn a lot. It did inspire me to get back into school. There's a lot of information that I don't know that I don't know, of course. So today was just one of those days where you're learning something and it actually inspires you to do more. I definitely recommend people to come to the Empower series. All it takes is your time. It's really free. You don't have to put anything else in it. So just come on down, you're gonna learn. It's gonna inspire you, you're gonna better yourself, because that's what we should all be striving for, to be better.
Thank you for watching our Empower Series YouTube video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit the subscribe button below, as well as the little button to be notified the next time we upload our video. Until then, stay connected with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media flavor is. Inspire the world to thrive. See you soon.